But yeah, let's go ahead and watch this video. The most disrespected NBA MVP, Steve Nash. Go ahead and check out your
NBA history. We have had numerous players that have been labeled as quote-unquote frauds or overrated, you could say. And a specific award that many people point to see certain frauds is the MVP winner. Players like Russell Westbrook or Derrick Rose, winners now in hindsight years later, many people share the opinion that they were not deserving recipients. And I think that those questions about those two in particular are more than valid, especially in the case of Derrick Rose winning over LeBron James and Dwight Howard. But there's one player in NBA history whose legacy is always in question consistently because of his back-to-back MVP status. And when you really take a step back and look at his career, especially in the years that he won the MVP award, it's kind of crazy the amount of disrespect that this player gets. And obviously, as you guys can tell from the title, I am talking about Steve Nash. Nash is looked at in many circles as an overrated player that had no business winning back-to-back MVPs in a league that had Shaq, Kobe Bryant, Tim Duncan, LeBron James, and numerous other players at elite levels. I mean, some people even go as far as to say that Steve Nash would not even be a Hall of Famer had it not been for his head coach Mike D'Antoni implementing the 7 seconds or less offense that launched Steve Nash and the Phoenix Suns into the stratosphere of offensive excellence, becoming one of the most historic teams on that side of the ball. And though there definitely is some truth to the criticism around Steve Nash, I believe a lot of it is completely overstated and it's gone to the point where Steve Nash is now underrated in those circles. So today we're gonna have a conversation about just how great was Steve Nash and why he is the most disrespected MVP in NBA history. But before we go any further,
I think it's so interesting, the Steve Nash conversation, because he's a player that's both like benefited and low-key like whatever the opposite of benefited is from analytics. Because I think in the moment, and this is what I always say about historical events, most, like, in the moment, there just had to be a reason as to why this dude, by a large pool of voters, was considered this good. You know what I'm saying? I think the shit applies to Bill Russell. I think the shit applies to Steve Nash. I think the shit applies to even like Marc Gasol winning DPOY over LeBron James, like shit like that. There had to be a somewhat logical reason as to why people felt the way that they did. You know what I'm saying? And I think what happened to Steve Nash was when the analytic boom happened within the NBA community and NBA conversations, people started looking at Steve Nash's stats and say, yo, this motherfucker Kobe was averaging 35 points a game, carrying a bunch of bums, while Steve Nash was in a system that benefited him and was averaging 15-8 or 15-10 and won MVP over the dude that was carrying a bunch of bums to 36 while averaging 36 points a game. I think that's what happened. But then as we advance more into the analytical conversation, people started to find the proper context to essentially gas Steve Nash into the heights that he used to be on. True shooting percentage, gravity, playmaking, all these new terms, I think have helped like contextualize Steve Nash in a brighter light. I think another player that's benefited from the same thing and also honestly went through the same career arc in terms of just the NBA conversation is Reggie Miller. Yo, bro, it wasn't too long ago when we were shitting on Reggie Miller as a community. You know what I'm saying? But now, with these more advanced analytics to back up these claims, Reggie Miller's looking a little bit better than we thought he was. So, it's interesting.
Make sure you guys drop a like on this video. It goes a long way. What also goes a long way is subscribing to the channel, because I am almost at 100,000 subscribers. I'm gonna be hitting 87K soon.
100,000 for
by
Honey
the end of the year, we
Mustard?
hit that 100K mark.
What?
But I can't do it without your help. And if you enjoyed this video, don't only hit that subscribe button, but that bell as well for post notifications. Without further ado, though, let's talk about one of the greatest offensive players in the history of this league, Steve Nash. Before we continue with this video, I want to give a shout out to today's phone.
Okay.
connection.
I see you mustard. I ain't promoting that
trying
shit,
to
though.
watch
I don't know
Atlanta
what that
on
shit is.
Netflix because the US allows you to protect
I know what
without
that shit
protect
is, man.
the link in the percent off.
Yeah.
Once again, shout out to I won't lie. I used to be a big proponent of the Mike D'Antoni made Steve Nash conversation. I mean, when you look at the point guards that Mike D'Antoni has had, he has definitely made the most out of those situations with them. I mean, not only are you talking about Steve Nash and James Harden, two of the better passers of their generation even before they got Mike D'Antoni, but then you throw in players like Raymond Felton or Jeremy Lin, who look like a legitimate all-star before Melo came and ruined it all. And at a certain point, you just have to acknowledge that Mike D'Antoni knows how to make certain guys look better than they actually are. But I also think that in the case of someone like Steve Nash or James Harden, as I mentioned earlier, you have to look at what they were before Mike D'Antoni and after. And because obviously this is about Steve Nash, we're going to focus on his career and not Harden's. Nash, before he got D'Antoni, was already recognized and seen as one of the best offensive players in the league, primarily because of his scoring ability and playmaking. He was already one of the best passers that the league had ever seen when he was teaming alongside Dirk Nowitzki in Dallas. Obviously, the first 3 to 4 years of his career, he got off to a bit of a slow start. He wasn't even a double-digit scorer. But by 2002, Nash had already improved to being one of the better point guards in the league, averaging 18 points a game along with 8 assists and 3 rebounds, shooting 48% from the field, nearly 46% from 3 on over 4 attempts a game.
Chat, remember when 18 points a game used to mean something, bruh? God. Remember when averaging 7 assists plus was like elite type shit, bruh? Good times, good times.
And 89% at the free throw line. But it's not just about the numbers that he put up in the box score. If you just go and watch the games, he was helping everybody get better and play at their best. As though Nash was not an all-star that season, Dirk had made his first all-star selection. As Dirk that season saw career highs in his points per game, field goal percentage, and three-point percentage that year. And the Mavericks jumped from being one of the better offenses in the league to being the best offense in the NBA by a noticeable margin. Going from an offensive.
Shout to Slander 22. B-Soul's been a viewer for a while. Keep up the fire b-ball content. Let's keep it a buck. It's a dub. And honestly, bring back Meek Mill Liddy for the intro, bro. I would if I was gonna fucking claim for it, bro. There was one day I literally woke up to like 100 copyright claims, bro, from UGA or whatever the fuck his record company is. Shit was nuts, bro. Now, luckily, this was like 3-4 years after, I used the intro of my video, so it didn't really affect me, to be honest with you, but still. Now, mind you, I'm a dude that, like, keeps up with his email inbox. You know what I'm saying? Like, right now, I have 0 unread emails. Like, I'm that dude. So, for me to wake up to 100 copyright claims was insane. Insane.
Rating that was 4th in the league of 107 to, like I said earlier, being 1st with 112. That was the impact of Steve Nash in his first season as a legitimate all-star caliber player. In 03, the Mavericks still remained as the best offense in the league, and Steve Nash was not only an all-star for the first time, but he also made 3rd-team All-NBA. Nash's court vision and passing, along with Dirk's ability to space the floor and play in the post as well, was something that was spectacular. You really had two players that fit like a glove offensively, and though defensively was definitely something that needed to be worked on a little bit, offensively they were something that we had never seen before. And it's very easy to pile on Steve Nash for his inability to win a championship with Dirk in Dallas and throughout his whole career, to be quite honest with you. But as many people have said, you do need luck to some degree to win championships, and luck was not on their side in 2003, because after being the best offense in the league, as I said earlier, and winning 60 games in the process of that regular season, they would eventually reach the Western Conference Finals, and Dirk Nowitzki went down with a knee injury in Game 3. He would later miss the remainder of the series. And
ain't this the year Tim Duncan won? Interesting. Interesting.
The rest was history as the Spurs went on to win in 6 games and eventually the NBA championship. And sure, maybe the Mavericks would have lost anyways, but they were only down 1-2 at the time. There's no guarantee that the Mavericks would have lost that series, but there's no
hey, listen, when are we gonna pod, bro? Like, that's all I'm saying. Chat. That's all I'm saying, bro. Like, damn. What we going pod, bro? Like, he lives rent free in your head at this point. Relax, bro. I wasn't thinking about Tim Duncan going into this fucking stream, bro. Like, relax.
Let's get it.
Little meat for $5. You looking real cute, cupcake. No homo. Appreciate all the quality content. Keep it up. Appreciate it, little meat. Appreciate it. They don't want, hey, Quirky. They don't want a pod though. You know what I'm saying? Well, it's cool though. It's cool. Bro. It's Monday. You know, it's Monday. Monday's not a pod day. You know, well, it is to me, but it's cool.
Denying that Dirk's injury immediately ruled them out of that contention. Now in 2004, Steve Nash definitely underperformed in the playoffs, but I think that 3-year stretch from 2002, 2003, and 2004, it goes to show you just how impactful Steve Nash was on a team that already had a great offensive player, but once you added one of the best playmakers of all time already in the middle of his prime to that team, they not only jumped to the best offense in the NBA, but for 3 years straight, they're on top of the NBA as the best offense, and they're reaching record-setting numbers as a team offense. As the Mavericks in that 3-year stretch was the best run of offense in NBA history. As relative to the league's efficiency, they were +7 in that time period. No other team in NBA history has been able to accomplish that. Now, I know some of you people may be saying, oh, but that's not all on Steve Nash. Look at what Dirk was able to do. Okay, well, how do you explain that the second best team to have that kind of efficiency below the Mavericks is the Suns with Steve Nash in the stretch from 05 to 08? Because now that we have debunked this theory that Mike D'Antoni is just solely responsible.
I mean, correlation doesn't equal causation. I will say that. And also, a sample size of 2 is not big enough to just say, it was Steve Nash. You know, it was Steve Nash. So, if we really want to get mathematical, let's get mathematical, bruh. Yeah. What are you talking about? Big computer science degree. Stop.
Responsible for making Steve Nash a Hall of Famer. Let's now talk about those years that are just so controversial to people and why Steve Nash was the rightful winner of those MVPs. Because for starters, when you look at the Phoenix Suns roster, please tell me the other great playmakers they had in that time period. I mean, the best answer you could probably think of is like Boris Diaw or maybe Joe Johnson. And look, Boris Diaw is pretty underrated in his own right, but the Suns as a team were already reaching all-time great offensive production before Boris Diaw joined in 2006. They did it in 05 as well. Because in 2004, the year before Steve Nash got there, when he was already helping lead the Mavericks to one of the better offenses in the league, the Suns were not only 29 and 53 to end off the season, but they were the 11th best team in points per game and 21st in offensive rating. And by the way, that was also with Mike D'Antoni as the head coach for a majority of the season, going 21 and 40 in the process.
Stream is not gonna be on Twitch tonight. We're gonna be on YouTube till like the 1st of September type shit.
But then the next year, with Steve Nash joining the fray, they immediately jumped to not only a 62-win team, but was first in points per game and first in offensive rating. Sean Marion had the most efficient season of his life to that point, going from 51% true shooting the year prior to nearly 56 in 05. Amari Stoudemire as well had the most efficient season of his career to that point, going from a 53% true shooting career in 03 and 04 to then in his third season when he gets Steve.
I think this is a case of 2 things can be true. Like, yes, D'Antoni was there and didn't have Steve Nash the year prior, but it can also be a case of Mike D'Antoni did help Steve Nash become the player that he is, but also Mike D'Antoni just couldn't operate because he didn't have that primary playmaker that he needs to operate the system that he wanted to operate in. So both things can be true. Steve Nash does not need Mike D'Antoni to be an all-time great player. But also, Steve Nash benefited from Mike D'Antoni being a coach. So
Steve Nash to initiate offense as one of the best pick and roll duos in the league, Amari Stoudemire had a 62% true shooting percentage. Hell, even Joe Johnson, who couldn't even crack 50% true shooting before Steve Nash got there. His first.
And also, I mean, we always like to say that basketball is a team game. All of these things work in cohesion. I think that's the beauty about just team anything. It doesn't even have to be sports, but like just team construction. Everything works in cohesion. You know what I'm saying? So to say all of this was Mike D'Antoni, or to say all of this is Steve Nash, and I'm not saying Young Mustard is saying in this video. I always like to look at these discussions as a pie, you know, or even like when we're trying to hold players and teams accountable. It's never gonna be on one person. There's a big list of reasons as to why a team loses or wins, from the players to coaching to injuries to luck to I don't even know, trainers. That's my new thing. We need to hold trainers more accountable. You know what I'm saying? So all of these things they're cohesive. So
First season with Steve Nash, it's nearly 56% true shooting. I mean, at a certain point in time, the facts just support that everywhere Steve Nash goes, he's making the people around him better. Nash was able to make reads in any way imaginable. In the pick and roll, he's one of the best PNR players in the history of basketball. Can split the screens, can use the roll man effectively, can find guys off of skip passes, is good in transition as well. And when you combine that with
also, I would like to challenge the notion of making your teammates better. Does their statistics just going up inherently mean that they are better? Or are their statistics just up because of the play style and how you play the game? You know what I'm saying? Because I can easily see, you know, a pick and roll big man, benefiting tremendously from playing alongside Steve Nash in that Mike D'Antoni system. You know what I'm saying? I could see shooters benefiting from that system with Steve Nash. I could see dump off big men playing better within that system. But does that necessarily mean they are playing better? I don't think so. Because I think Tim Duncan, I can make the argument Tim Duncan and motherfuckers like Bill Russell made their teammates better than Steve Nash. In my opinion. You know what I'm saying? Just because of how well they played off ball. Now, again, I'm not saying Steve Nash couldn't play off ball. But just the way they played the game of basketball, it allowed other teammates to like truly thrive more, develop into better players that can operate on their own. As opposed to Steve Nash and this Phoenix Suns team. Again, it's kind of the fault of the system being heliocentric the way that it was. But at the same token, it's like, I don't know. It's interesting, though. It's interesting.
With his ability to be efficient everywhere on the court, at the rim, from the mid-range area, from behind the arc, inside the arc, at the free throw line. And before some of you guys try to dismiss what Steve Nash did as far as his playmaking goes by saying, oh, he was just ball dominant, it's the same stuff that James Harden and Trae Young do. Well, I would say that is also incorrect. Nash was an elite off-ball player primarily due to his ability to shoot. He could come off pin downs, off-ball screens, and even had a little bit of gravity off the ball as well to create for others. I mean, I'm not calling him Steph Curry or Damian Lillard, but the guy could shoot off the catch. I mean, the guy could shoot everywhere on the court in any way, shape, or form, so it's not surprising that off the ball he was so impactful as well. His ability to play off the ball helped all the offenses that he was a part of, whether he was in Dallas or in Phoenix. Nash was truly a joy to watch offensively, and he carried that over not only in the 2005 season, his first year there, but in 2006 as well. As with Amari Stoudemire only playing 3 games that whole regular season, Steve Nash did what only Steve Nash could do: carry a team with only one all-star beside him in Shawn Marion, elevate him to a career year of 22 and 13 on a career high true shooting percentage of 59%, while in Nash's own right averaged 18 points a game, 11 assists, 4 rebounds, shooting 51% from the field, 44% from 3 on 4 attempts a game, and 92% at the free throw line. Nash still lifted the Phoenix Suns to 54 wins and finished second in offensive rating and first in points per game. I mean, it really is crazy that people overlook what the actual definition of MVP is for their own convenience. I mean, Nash showed in every single way imaginable offensively that he was the most impactful player for that team and throughout the league. I mean, I personally believe that in 2007, you could even still make the argument that Nash was actually robbed of an MVP.
Steve Nash is just lucky Chris Paul was just developing stuff, man. I ain't gonna lie. That's all I did that only Steve Nash could do. Man, I'm just saying, Chris Paul, if Chris Paul was drafted like 2 years earlier, and Chris Paul was turning up in 07, nah, man. I think Chris Paul could do a lot of what Steve Nash is doing. That's just me, though. That's just me.
That year, as Nash had his best offensive season to date, in my opinion, averaging 19 points and 12 assists on 65% true shooting, while leading the Suns to their second in 3 years span 60+ win season, and of course finishing atop of the league in points per game and offensive rating. Now remember what I said earlier, so many people are gonna say, what about the playoffs? Why is it with all this talent on the team, guys like Joe Johnson, Amari Stoudemire, Boris Diaw, despite the fact that Nash made them better, why couldn't he make them good enough for them to at least make one NBA Finals in that time span? Well, there are two things I have to say about that. For one, Nash in the playoffs with the Phoenix Suns led them to probably the best playoff offense in the history of basketball. The best 4-year playoff offense is held by Nash's Suns, who were plus 10.7 in 51 playoff games between 05 and 08. And remember, as I said earlier, his Dallas teams were also top 10 as well. And a lot of this happened with lineup shifts all around. As I mentioned earlier, Amari Stoudemire basically missed the entire 2006 season, only playing 3 games in the regular season, and Joe Johnson left after the 2005 year. So Nash being able to do this with different lineups almost every single season only makes it that much more impressive. I mean, as you can see from this graphic right here, shout out to B More Talks Basketball on Twitter for it, the Suns at their peak in 2005 were the best offensive postseason in the history of basketball. And this graphic also includes the 2010 NBA season, in which they finished off that year being first in offensive rating and first in points per game, and they did that without Mike D'Antoni, by the way, and come playoff time they finished with a plus 13 in relative offensive rating. Now the second reason, in my opinion, why they did not make even one NBA Finals in this time stretch also comes down to bad luck. As I mentioned earlier, there were times in Steve Nash's career where he probably should have made an NBA Finals, but unfortunately injuries, suspensions, all of those things came into play. As you can look at the 2006 Western Conference Finals, losing to the Dallas Mavericks in 6 games. They went throughout not only that whole postseason, but as I mentioned earlier, the whole year basically without Amari Stoudemire. Who knows what the outcome of that year and that series would have been had they had Amari that whole entire time. Then you look at what happens the
I think 07, just because of the fact that the Cavs made it out the East, it was on some like, all right, if you can make it out the West, you got the championship. And for the Suns to be that close to make it out the West, yeah, I ain't gonna lie. If there was a year the Suns really coulda, shoulda won a championship, it was 07. It really was 07, bro. But that's tough. That's tough right there. That's tough.
Next year in 2006, and I'm not gonna lie, this still aggravates me to this day. Throughout the whole series, players like Bruce Bowen, Manu Ginobili, they are just being extremely dirty and physical with Steve Nash. And then on one play, while Steve Nash gets the rebound trying to go up court, Robert Horry basically body checks Steve Nash out of bounds, and because Amari Stoudemire and Boris Diaw stand up and walk away from the bench, just in an attempt to check on their teammate and stand up for him after he was done dirty, the league decides to suspend 2 of the Suns' best players as they're going back home with the series tied 2-2 when they have home court advantage, and they proceed to lose game 5 and obviously game 6 as well. I am so convinced in my heart of hearts, even though you could say it's an agenda for me to push this video, but hey, I believe if that altercation never took place, that the Suns would have won that series.
Wait, hold on. Didn't the Spurs win in 07 too? But chat, y'all don't win. Hey chat, y'all don't really want a pod for him, man. Chat. Chat, y'all don't listen, bro. Y'all don't really want a pod, bro. It's fine though. Like it's fine. I get it, man. I get it. It's a Monday. Chat, it's a Monday. It's a Monday, bro. I get it, bro. I get it. It's cool. It's cool though. It's cool.
They beat the Dallas Mavericks in the conference finals and go on to win the championship against the Miami Heat. I mean, it truly is remarkable the things that Steve Nash had to go through in Dallas and multiple times in Phoenix, that one can make the argument if those things never happened that he would be a 3-time champion right now. But as many people have said, not only do you need the ability, the coaching, but you do need a little bit of luck sometimes to win any championship in professional sports. And unfortunately, more times than not, Steve Nash just did not have the luck of the Irish on his side. Now, I would be
like, yeah, luck, right? Steve Nash didn't have it. So who had it though? Like, who had it? Like, who had it though? Like, energy cannot be destroyed. It can only be transferred. You know, like, type shit, bruh. But y'all don't want to pod though. Y'all don't want, you know. Y'all don't want to pod though, bruh. Like, come on, man. Come on. Shout out to the 350 in the button. Y'all don't want to. Come on, man. Come on. It's cool though. It's cool.
Remiss if I went through this whole video gassing up Steve Nash and not acknowledging the times that Steve Nash did underperform or his inabilities. You can look at a series such as 2004 against the Dallas Mavericks, where Nash, who is known as one of the most efficient players in the history of the league, shot below 40% from the field throughout the entire series. They would go on to lose to the Sacramento Kings in the first round in 5 games. Another issue about Nash in his career that obviously has plagued him is his inabilities on the defensive side of the ball. As you guys saw, I talked about a lot of what he impacted offensively, but I did not talk much about his defensive impact. And that's obviously by design. Nash on the defensive side of the ball was a liability. I mean, he showed effort, so it wasn't like he was just out there not trying, but unfortunately, he just was not good at any particular thing. His size off rip made him a target for multiple players on ball. Off the ball at times, he could get caught ball watching, and his rotations could be a little bit late. But the one thing I will say about Steve Nash's defense is that I think it gets over romanticized just how bad of a defender he is. And it's not because he isn't a bad defender, but it's because he's a point guard. Guards are so limited with their overall defensive impact for a team. You can really hide how bad a point guard is, or any guard in general of that size, when you give him the pieces around him that can mask those problems. But unfortunately, throughout Steve Nash's career, he was never really given great defenders on the interior. I mean, he played a good chunk of his career with 2 players who were
I can't give Steve Nash, bro. I can't give that to Steve Nash, man. I ain't gonna lie. Can't do it, man. Because when we have these discussions, that plays into a part as to why, like, you weren't able to accomplish the things that you accomplished. And I understand that's what Mustard is saying here, but to throw that bail, I just can't go with it. And I think that's a problem with trying to build around a point guard. I think these are just the deficiencies that some players have, and we just gotta face the reality. You know what I'm saying? That is what it is without throwing bail, you know.
Were not known for their defensive exploits, and it was quite the opposite. Players like Dirk Nowitzki and Amari Stoudemire, especially Amari Stoudemire, who was just god-awful on that side of the ball. Don't get me wrong, I give credit to players like Rajah Bell and Sean Marion, but they're not elite rim protectors, which could have came in real handy for a guy like Steve Nash. For comparison, look at Steph Curry, who was never known as a great defensive player. Not saying he was as bad as Nash, but his defense is a part of his weaknesses. He was fortunate to play with somebody like Draymond Green for a good chunk of his career. Hell, even throwing guys like Andrew Bogut or Kevon Looney. Nash never really had that luxury for someone on the interior to do what someone like Draymond does for Steph. Another issue though that I do have with Steve Nash that many people don't talk about enough is his unwillingness at times to be aggressive. I mean, Nash has even said it himself that there were a lot of times he should have shot the ball a lot more. Because when you look at some of these postseason numbers for Steve Nash, he could have taken over these series and playoffs as a whole a lot more than he actually did. This is a guy that can literally score everywhere on the court in any way, shape, or form. There's no reason why Nash can't go out there every single year in postseason and average around 20 to 25 points a game, along with 10 to 12 assists. That's how elite of a scorer he is. And if you disagree, then I suggest you go back and watch his 2005 postseason run, as he averaged 24 points a game, 11 assists, and 5 rebounds, shooting 52% from the field field, 39% from 3-on-4 attempts, and 92% at the free throw line. And if you want something more concrete, you can look at his run from 2002 up until 2010 with the Mavs and the Suns in the playoffs, as his per 75 in the playoffs in that time span was 21 points a game, 4 rebounds, and nearly 11 assists. With less than 4 turnovers per contest, the Mavs and Suns had a plus 8.7 relative offensive rating combined, and he had a true shooting percentage of nearly 62%, which was 5% better than the average in the NBA. Nash, when he wanted to, could take over a game on an instant. It really is a shame that he didn't activate that mode a lot more times than he did, because if so, I definitely do believe that Steve Nash would have been remembered a lot more fondly on the offensive side of the ball, because there are people that will literally swear to you that Steve Nash is not among the 5 best offensive players that basketball history has ever seen, because when you combine the fact that his scoring ability—
That's why he's the most disrespected? Because motherfuckers don't want to put him in the top 5 offensive weapons of all time? I don't know about that, bruh. I mean, there's a lot of great offensive weapons out there, man. There's a lot, bruh. There's a lot. I'm saying Jordan, Kobe, LeBron, Curry. That's 4 right there. Dirk versus Steve Nash. Ugh, I don't know. Chris Paul versus Steve Nash. I don't know. Who else? LaMelo Ball. Please stop. Please stop. Jokic or Steve Nash? You know, I don't know.
Is second to very few players in this league, with the ability to score everywhere on the court as efficiently—
I will say Steve Nash is who y'all think John Stockton is, though. I will say
as anybody ever in the history of basketball, with his passing being second to only Magic Johnson in my personal opinion. Yes, I do believe he's the second best passer of all time, combined with the regular stats, advanced stats, and every type of stat you could pull up to prove it, and that he revolutionized the point guard position as a whole. I have to say, him being a top 5 player on the offensive side of the ball, that's a no-brainer in my book. And the fact that you have people going out there saying he's one of the most overrated players of all time, he never deserved any of his MVPs, when in reality it's quite the opposite, that he's one of the most underrated players of all time, and you could argue he should have 3 straight MVPs from 05, 06, and 07. It makes me believe that Steve Nash is one of the most disrespected players in the history of basketball, hence why I made this video. But hey, you guys, those are just my—
I'll give it to him. Pause. Steve Nash, I think he is one of the most polarizing players to talk about in the NBA, because he's an advanced analytics guy, but he's not an analytics guy, if that makes sense. Like, motherfuckers want to have surface level conversations and really want to bring up stats to, you know, back up their points. And they bring up, man, that motherfucker averaged 18 and 8, bruh. That shit's not moving me. But then the advanced analytics comes in and, like, you know, contextualizes it a little bit better, in my opinion. I'll say that. I'll give it to him. I'll give it to him. I always liked Steve Nash, so I don't really got smoke for Steve Nash like that. I know there was a point in time, like, Lowe had a lot of smoke for Steve Nash, Reggie Miller, John Stockton. And I find it funny that literally 2 out of those 3 are just having, like, a turnaround in terms of, like, public perception. I think people still don't rock with John Stockton. But, nah, man. Steve Nash was like that, bro. I like Steve Nash. So, and shout out to Young Muscle for the video. Actually, let's finish it off.
My thoughts and opinions. I want to know what you guys think down below about Steve Nash, as the question of the day is
never mind. He's just asking questions. Shout out to Young Muscle for the video, though. Type shit and things of that nature.